This is Salvador Ballesteros, 40 years old, a bracero. At home in northern Mexico, he earns about $200 a year farming 2 acres of cotton owned by someone else. $200 to support a wife and 6 children. Even in Mexico, this is not much. It is Salvador's dream for himself and for his children to own a piece of land. To buy land, he must earn more money doing the only thing he knows how to do, farming. And the only way he can do this is to work in the United States as a bracero.
All right, what's up, familia? Welcome inside the pad. Hope you guys are doing good. Keep it between the lines. Got your load secure. All right. If you guys don't know what's going on, I'll go ahead and explain it like I always do, man. So once a month, at the very least, once a month, we're going ahead and we're doing a little bit on Chicano history. Something that I'll be real with you guys. I'm not that educated about. I'm not, man. I cannot really talk too much to you guys about Chicano history because I don't really know too much of Chicano history. But I got somebody who does. Hey, man, let's go ahead and let's bring in a friend of mine. I see him as a mentor. I love talking to this guy. He is a high school Chicano studies high school teacher from San Jose, Mr. Robert Anthony.
Ed, how you doing, man? How's everybody doing out there? Hope everybody's well. Hope everybody's in a good place.
Good, man. The weather's starting to cool down, so the weather cooled down a while back and then it heated back up. Now it cooled down. So trying to keep it nice and cool now, man. I'm tired of the hot days.
Me as well.
Yeah. So, hey, what's up, Big D? Lisa, orale, OG out there in the AZ, homie. What's up, big dog? How you doing, Denise? All right. So, Robert, I always love talking to you and having conversations with you, man. You teach me so much about things that I have no idea about. And one of the things that you sent me, and by the way, in case anybody's wondering what's with the bandana, it's because I'm representing. No, this bandana was given to me by Brother Alfonso from House of Rest Church, and he marched with the Cesar Chavez march recently that they just had. So it was a gift that he wanted me to have. So there it is, man. Robert, you sent me a few articles and told me a couple of things that have happened in Chicano history, things that blow my mind, and I'm like, I have no idea what this is. When you told me about Los Braceros or sent me articles of it to go ahead check it out, I looked into it. I'm like, wow, how is this not talked about? How is this not American history, man? Because this played a huge role in immigration and how people came here from south of the border to work. People just think about just migrant workers, but there were this program called Los Braceros. First, Robert, let me go ahead and ask you, how do you teach your students about Los Braceros? I mean, I'm talking about I'm a student, I go sit down, and you're going to teach for the first time Los Braceros. Where do you start?
The first thing I always ask is if we have any outside knowledge of this. Have you heard of this? I'm just curious. Have we heard about it? Right. And then what I do is then I'll ask them, what do you think we're talking about? What do you think Los Boceros? What do you think we're going to talk about? And then, when they have their looks and everything, then I try to make it even easier than that. Then I try to say like, my Spanish, everybody speaks Spanish. Can anybody translate braceros to me? And there's a lot of them, even the Spanish speakers who don't know the translation, right? And then I'll ask them, what do we call these? And then everybody will say, hey, manos, right? And then what do we say arms? How do we call arms in Spanish? You would say brazos. So braceros is a play off brazos because then I'll tell them it's going to be people who are going to be laborers using their arms primarily to work. And then they'll be like, oh, okay, they'll trip out on that. And once they trip out on that, then I got them. That's like my little hook. Like, oh, that's kind of cool. Or like, hey, I didn't realize that. Then I got a hook, and then I get into the subject matter and talk about how, the Braceros was not only this. I really equate the Bracero program to as close as modern day slavery as you can get. Right now, please, out there in YouTube land, I'm not equating it to slavery. Slavery was terrible. With there's nothing you could say about slavery. It's unredeemable, right? And the stain that America has because of slavery. I'm not comparing it to both. They're not equal. But what I'm saying is, as far as being exploited, as far as working to the bone, as far as being taken advantage of, it's got a lot of parallels to slavery, with the exception of, you weren't being whooped or you weren't owned, and in a way you kind of were owned because you had nowhere to go. You know what I mean? So it's just one of those things that, man, I look at, man, and God bless the Braceros, man. Just the whole United States changed because of them. Right? The Southwest developed because of them. I honestly believe that. I honestly believe that because of the Braceros, the whole Southwest, the whole landscape changed. Right? And I try to, so that's how I get there. I try to give them a little something, see if I can get them hooked, and then start breaking down some knowledge. And every once in a while, it's kind of cool because the student will be like, you know what? My grandfather was a Bracero, or somebody was a Bracero in our family, or this and that. And I'll be like, oh, shoot, get down. Well, there you go right there. Yep.
So okay, so let's get into who are and what is the Braceros, because I had no idea. I had no knowledge until you told me about this. I looked into it. So, in 1942, obviously, we know the whole World War II thing was happening. Right. There was a big shortage of workers, especially, hard labor and all. So what happened is they came up with this program for south of the border for guys that were really struggling to make ends meet. And I mean, it's Mexico, there's no shortage of guys making ends meet. This program went from 1942 to 1964. And we'll get to that in just a second, of it going so far. And Chavez, Cesar Chavez, his role in this. But, there was this program, Los Braceros, from this is the research that I did. But if I'm wrong, let me know. A lot of guys were like, cool, this is gold, man. We get to go up there. We get to work. We get to make a good living and send some money back down to our families. A lot of them were looking to buy land and start their own little farming, back home and all. So they would board this train that what they called it the burro. And they would stack this train like jam packed, very unsafe and all, but nonetheless, man, just to get up there. And apparently they did have to pay. They were actually, it's very easy for everybody to say like, oh man, the United States is the bad guy on this. And I'm not saying they're not, but Mexico was also the bad guy here as well, because they were exploited by, so their own people as well, where they had to pay literally 1,000 pesos back in, the 40s and 50s to get up here. They were exploited by that. And it's like, I guess I would pretty much say like the coyotes today, right? It's like, hey man, I want to go up, to United States. Cool. Well, you got to pay us so much and we'll get you there. Even though it was legal, they did have to pay to be put on this waiting list. And a lot of them were giving them their very last, peso that they really had, because their promise, is before social media, this before you could get pictures and talk to people anywhere else, their thing was like, hey man, I'm going for America, the American dream, and I'm gonna be able to send a lot of money back down. So they would give up their last penny. And some of these were as young as 16-year-olds, Robert, that were leaving, man. And that is crazy right there already. But what is your thoughts? Them paying already just to make it up, and even being put on a waiting list where they would wait. And we'll get to Empima in a bit, but I mean, them having to pay, man, with their last penny because they thought they were gonna go and live this American dream, man.
Right. Um, First of all, you're absolutely right. They wanted a part of the American dream, um, which was a dream and a nightmare at the same time. It was a double edged sword, right? You talk about this train, you know, those are the lucky ones because some guys walked to the Barcelo station to get picked up to get taken to America. Some guys packed up. You talking about some guys who packed up their last. Talking about the guys who packed up their last peso to get on this train. Some guys packed up their last little meal and said, "I'm walking." Right, and the reason why is because of desperation. It's out of desperation. We gotta remember the Great Depression wasn't that far behind, right? The Great Depression. So the Great Depression hit the United States hard. I could just imagine. I'm not a Mexican uh, government. I don't know much about that, but I would assume it was a Great Depression. I wonder how bad Mexico really got, right? So some guys walked. It took some guys. I've read stories of it taking some guys a week, 2 weeks to walk, one meal. I had one time. God, I wish I had the source. I had one time read where a guy, just to keep his nutrition up, the only thing he had to eat was banana peels.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Right, just peels of the banana, man. Just think about that. Just think about that harsh reality. So it's unfortunate. And then on top of that, when you have a government that's first of all, the United States and Mexico, they agreed to this program.
Yes.
It was an agreement. They worked it out, and I don't know why Mexico would charge them. Again, I'm not. I don't have knowledge of that, but that just doesn't seem fair right off the bat, right? We know these people are struggling. We know your country's struggling because why else would a country say, "Yeah, okay, man, go ahead and take all our men"? Because we got to remember there were no women Barcelos.
Mhm.
Go ahead and take our men, like you said, some as young as 16. Go ahead and go to this other country to work. That's not a recipe for success for a country, right? So just for them to allow it, and then on top of it saying, "Okay," and on top of it, we're going to charge you some money to get you there. No, it's unfair. And like you hit it on, the United States isn't just the bad guy in this. Unfortunately, the Barcelos were exploited by both sides. They were exploited by the United States government, the people who they went to work for, and they were exploited by the Mexican government and people who were able to make money off of the Barcelos in Mexico as well.
Yeah, and they would get to a place, a town that I've never heard of till just I do me doing this research, but Empire. They would get into a town of Empire in Mexico. From what I understand, the ones that were going into California went through there. Now I don't know if it's braceros, that went everywhere, Arizona or not, but I heard that California, the ones that were going to California, stopped at Empire, and that would be pretty much like the where you would go wait and what you see the picture behind us, they would be fumigated pretty much.
And
You would be stripped down, you would be fumigated, chemicals in your face, your hair, your body. And not only that, but I guess nobody was really keeping hard count. They wanted more workers than they had jobs. So what would happen just crunching a few numbers here, looked like this camp, it was almost kind of like an internment camp, right? Where you just sit there and you wait. And at one point they had 124,000, but they were only able to make room for 90,000. So the other ones would just wait. And from what they were told, again, this is just to the research I did. Um, that what they were told is like, hey, you're just going to go to hit employment for a day, 2, maybe 3 days max, and then boom, you're off to the States, man, and you could start to work. Well, some of these guys were left there for 2, 3 weeks, and they're not getting paid anything. They're not being fed. They're not. They don't have water. This isn't a camp where it's like, don't trip, come here, and we'll feed you. We got water for you. We got no. It's hey, come here and you wait here, but you're on your own. You're on your own. You're away from your family. You're away from everything, but you're on your own. So, and some guys didn't have money. Some guys gave their last peso, to get to go up, man. And it's like, okay, I'll wait for a day, I'll wait for 2 days, I'll wait for 3 days. But now it's like, oh, well, now we're waiting for a week. Now we're waiting for 2 weeks. Now we're waiting for 3 weeks. And that is when they started eating, banana peels and, just things off the ground and, digging in trash and whatever they can find, man, to try to find something. Because, yeah, in confinement, they were not, I guess I'm not gonna say welcome. They were welcome to be there, but the hospitality wasn't there. It's just like, this is where there's a pit stop. We're gonna check you out, and whenever we make room for you, then you go up. But in the meanwhile, you're not. This is no program, man, where we take care of you. We got no food for you here, So, and it was barbed wire. It was they were kind of like cattle, man. It's tough to just what you were saying earlier, it was more like modern day slavery. I know people get, kind of hectic when you say like, no, nothing is as bad as slavery. But I mean, this right here, I mean, modern day types, like, yeah, man, they were put in areas where it's like, hey, you give me all your money, you know, you're granted all this, but now you're kind of like cattle. You're behind barbed wire. We got no food for you. We got nothing for you, but you agreed to do this. So here you are now, and you can't leave, man, until till the time comes. I mean, they were kind of held against their will, Robert. Did you hear about Empalme and the small town of Empalme?
I did, and I've heard of other things as well. Like, it's ironic that you say, that they were treated like cattle, because one picture I sent you, they're actually fenced in like cattle.
Yes. Yeah.
And I was just, and I've actually heard that sometimes where they would go would be so packed that you can literally fall asleep standing up.
Mhm.
Now, when you're able to fall asleep standing up, that means you can't fall forward because there's somebody close on you. You can't fall backwards because they would pile you in like cattle. So just think about being able to fall asleep standing up and not worrying about falling down because you can't. Because there's just so many people there. You're taking a look at that fumigation that you're talking about. We got to realize that's DDT. That's an illegal substance today. That's poison. They were spraying poison on these men like it was nothing. Welcome to America, by the way, let's spray you with poison first. Right? And again, they're doing the United States a favor by doing the work that people went off and couldn't do anymore. Right? We got to remember, World War II was huge. The United States was fighting on two fronts, fighting in Europe and fighting in Japan. A lot of men went out there to go fight. Right? So they needed a lot of men. Right, so it was no big deal to them to be 20,000 over. That's good surplus. That's good business, and we're not coming out of pocket, like you said. I'm pretty sure they weren't getting. Not, I'm pretty sure they weren't getting 3 square meals a day. I could just imagine the facilities. Right, I'm pretty sure they were open, nice showers, a place to go to the restroom. Right, a lot of these guys showed up, with fleas and lice from just being all together. So that DDT, they'd spray them, they kill whatever they had. Right? It just, to me, I just always think about how that could just strip you of your pride and dignity. You know what I mean? Because, to go there and to be able to do that and just, you have no rights, man. They got there. They came to help. They were guaranteed an honest wage. I believe it was 50 cents an hour they were supposed to make. 50 cents an hour, probably the equivalent to about $9 today. Okay, you're not. Nobody's gonna. You can't survive on $9 today. Could have probably survived on 50 cents back then. You know what I mean? But the thing that I always challenge students to think about and critically think about is, we spoke about it lasted 22 years, the program. They were treated harshly. They were exploited. They were, Ed, if you and me right now decided to go to work in China, let's just say it's dreamland, and you and me were like, hey, let's go to China. We're supposed to go work there because there's no work here. And we show up. What are they going to speak to us? In English? No. They're speaking Chinese to us. What do you think the contracts were written in? The contracts were written in English. So even if I had any rights, or I'm thinking I'm going to get something, and they give me the paper that I signed, how do I know what I'm signing?
Yeah.
Who do I ask if I'm signing the right documents? The guy next to me who just came over with me? So you're set up. Sometimes, it says 50 cents an hour. You know what? This week we're giving you 35 cents an hour. Who do you go to?
Yeah. Yeah.
This week, you know what? We didn't make payroll. We'll pay you next week.
Right.
You know what? And then complain. What do you think would happen if you complained? And they have 20,000 guys ready to work, like you said, on standby.
Exactly.
Think about it.
Yeah. And some of that stuff did happen. First of all, they would check your hands. I mean, they would check you, man. They would check to see if you're going to be able to do a lot of this hard labor. If not, then you were no good. Like I said, I mean, it's just crazy how they would check you, make you strip down, and can this guy really do the labor that we need him to do for so many hours, right? I mean, they were working these guys 12 plus hours, going all day long, man. And the crazy thing about it, what I was able to see is that their wives and kids at home, they weren't getting too much money, man. They weren't getting the money that they really thought they were going to get. They were basically just getting the pennies, and a lot of the ladies were like, "Hey, there's nothing really extra. It's basically the same whether he left or stayed. The only difference is I don't have my husband here."
Right.
And
Now,
they were gone
you're
for
absolutely
yeah,
right.
they were gone for a long time, man, not knowing if they were ever going to come back. And some of these guys died. I know I saw my boy Fred put up there when in the truck accident that died. I guess there's a highway that's named after them. I think it was like 24 of them or something like that died. But yeah, quite a few of them died, and none of this stuff went. It's like, you know what, we're gonna hold them in honor. We're gonna pay for a burial. No, none of it went with honor. It
That wouldn't happen today.
Mm.
If 24 field workers got injured today, they wouldn't do it with honor, in my opinion. They're a commodity that we take for granted. We just do. We just do, and even during this time. But I'm gonna, you were mentioning. I'm gonna hit this point real quick because you were mentioning. You said, you know what, they weren't really sending a lot of money back. I'm gonna give you an example how Mexico also exploited the Bracero. I don't know what they called it, but Mexico, the government of Mexico, came up with almost like we're gonna take some money from your check too. Okay, Ed, and we're gonna take it because let's say you're a Bracero for 4 years or 5 years. Every check you get, we're going to put a little bit of that money away. When you come back, that money that we've been taking, it's going to be your money. Think they got it?
Yeah.
You think they got that money? Of course not.
No. Yeah, exactly what you brought up. I did some research on that, and yeah, the Mexican government did keep some of that money that that they were promised when they got back and all. So I mean, that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of dirty hands all over this.
All over.
Yeah, and why did this last? If this was made just for World War II, World War II did not last into the 60s. Okay.
You're a great Chicano studies teacher. That's the question I always ask my class as well. Good question. Why do you think?
Yeah, because World War II did not last to the 60s. Okay. So why did this last? Well, cheap labor. Now the boys come back. They're ready to work. They're expecting a certain wage. It's like, okay, listen, we went off to war. All right. We were making so many dollars. Now we're back, American heroes, and we're ready to get back to work. And it's like, well, wait a second, man. I'm you want me to pay you what I was paying you before when I got this guy over here who's working 2 times as hard or 2 times the hours, and I'm paying him, shoot, penny to the dollars than what I was paying you, man. So you know what, Mr. American hero that went off to go fight World War II, because it affected them too.
Of
They
course.
come back, and it's like, okay, man, I just went. I went to Europe. I went to fight the Japanese, man. They came back, and a lot of them, it's documented. A lot of them were out of jobs, Robert. A lot of them came back, man. A lot of them had a hard time finding a job. Why? Because the braceros were exploited, where it's like, you know what? We're just going to keep you here. This is very, very cheap labor. Our American heroes are back. Pat on the back. Go find something else, man. We're making some big bank over here. And by the way, they don't even know how much they're getting, how much they should get, how much they should send back home. They don't even know, man. We're all in cahoots. The United States, Mexico, the top dogs there, man. We're all keeping this labor, man. So, man, talk to us a little bit about that, Robert,
Well,
where, hey, this program was specifically made to fill the void for the boys that went to go fight in World War II and the shortage of men that we had to work. That's why this was specifically made, yet it went all the way into the 60s.
yeah. Well, 22 years. I look at two things. The first thing I look at is we're talking about this and we're equating it with, pretty close to modern day slavery,
Mhm.
right? Big time exploitation. People just getting violated. People the stories that we research are crazy. I wonder what the stories are like that we don't research, that we can't research, because what we read and what we can research is one thing, but how about the things that are like this happened there too that people aren't privy to unless you saw it for real? Those are the things that trip me out. Like, I wonder what other stuff were happening, what other things were going on here. You know what I mean? It just makes me wonder. But another thing that I want to touch on is 22 years, modern day slavery, wages aren't all that. Why weren't braceros going back to Mexico? Like, if I was a bracero and this all happened to me, and I look at you and I go back to my town and I see you and like, hey, yeah, what's going on? Blah blah blah. And you're like, hey, I'm going to America, man. It's my shot. I'm gonna be a bracero. Why wouldn't I tell you like, hey, bro, think about it. Maybe that's not what you want to do. Do you know that you get exploited? Do you know that you're working like this? Do you know why was word of mouth not going back to Mexico and these braceros that they were getting the short end of the stick? Why do you think?
Um, well, I was researching, man. I wasn't really sure how many were able to go back, except for the ones that were turned away. But were there
Go
braceros that were sent back?
just so you know, it was a right. You could go back whenever you want. You were because of this program, you were able to go back and forth. You didn't have to stay here. It was like you had the ability to say. It was just an ability to come over here and work.
Right.
If you want to go back, you can go back.
Okay, so why didn't they go back and pretty much warn the others and
Yeah,
say, like, hey, you know what? This is what's really happening, because there is no social
right.
media or anything like that.
Not,
Where,
not only is it happening, not only are these guys taking advantage of us, our government's taking advantage of us. How come that wasn't being widespread? Why do
hmm,
you think?
by the braceros themselves. I
Like,
would
if you're a trucker, if you had this terrible gig that some dude didn't pay you and blah 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 this, and then I run into you 6 months later somewhere, I'm like, hey bro, I got this contract from this dude. You would just be like, oh cool, or would you be like, hey, be careful, man. I'm
yeah,
not trying to. That guy does business like. Wouldn't you
yeah,
give me the heads up?
yes, definitely, yes.
Why weren't the people give the heads up, and why did people keep on coming?
My best guess, Robert, would probably be just They were threatened not to say anything, um, either by their lives or family, maybe not even death, but hey, you can't come back. That money is going to be released to you at some point. I would probably go somewhere along those lines, because I can't really think of anything else at the moment. But
How
what?
about this? How about this? Would you rather have $1 in your pocket or no dollar in your pocket?
Give me the dollar.
Right. So how bad do you think Mexico was with its job and its economy that people were still willing to say like, thanks for the warning, man, or thanks for the heat, but we got to eat. And if this is the only way I can put money in my pocket for right now, I got to go.
Mhm.
Now, was that the only reason? No. But don't tell that was a reason. Desperation is a reason to go. When you're willing to spend your last peso, like we talked about, when you're willing to eat your last lunch and you know you might not eat for a week and a half, when you're willing to go to another country that's foreign to you, where you don't speak the language, where you don't have family, when you're willing to leave your wife and your kids at home to go to another country, you're desperate. You're desperate. And
Yeah.
desperation, once you're desperate like that, it's easy to exploit you. What are you going to do? What do you, dude? Go ahead, bounce then. Come on, next.
Yeah. You got there's real no education. There's really no, future for you. There's really no anything like that, man. So yeah, no, I could definitely see that 100%, man. And the fact that these families were left behind, and why this is actually pretty important, because some of these guys actually started some family, not many of them from what I saw, but actually started some families, this side of the border, man. And that,
You're
played its
absolutely
own
right.
role. That played its own role in itself. So I want to get to Cesar Chavez and his role in this, because Cesar was trying to get, unionized. He was trying to get better wages. He was trying to, betterment for the working man, right? And you had the braceros here. And it's like, hey, wait a second, man. This program goes against what I'm trying to do.
Right.
Okay. I don't like now. Some people have certain feelings about Cesar Chavez. Hey,
Right.
man, each their own. Okay. But I understand his mentality, which, like, look, what they're doing to los braceros, I don't want being done to workers at all. But as long as they keep them here, then that cuts my feet from what I'm trying to do. I can't do what I need to do, where it's like higher wages, some better benefits. We're out here dying, we're out here working hard, killing ourselves, man. But now you bring in this program here, los braceros, and now I can't do that because now you're telling me, hey, I'm replacing you with, people that don't complain. They can't complain. They got nobody to complain to. And hey, man, they're gonna work. They're gonna work all the way till they die, man. And then when they die, we'll just, ship them out like nothing. Where you guys can't do that because you're American citizens, and just like the boys that came back from World War II, you're replaceable by just this kind of what we look at as, lower working class, that we don't have to pay much or pay attention to their needs or any other demands, and treat them like human beings, man. So what's your thoughts on Cesar Chavez in all of this?
You said everything that needs to be said on that subject. Just in expressing that, you're absolutely right. Those were the reasons, right? But I wanted, if you don't mind, I just want to touch on something real quick before I expand on the Cesar Chavez. Is we got to understand that 4.6 million contracts were given to Braceros in the 22 years. 4.6 million. Now let's say half of them stayed, or let's say a third of them stayed. What do you think that did to the development of Mexicans in the Southwest? It exploded. We got to realize that the Braceros were a big factor, in the explosion of the population in the Southwest. We have to recognize that. And the only reason I wanted to touch on that is because they did so. It's so much more than just coming over here and working, right? They did so much. Like I said, they're responsible for a big chunk of growth in the community. They are, and we look at the Braceros as the Braceros, but think of the ones who ventured out, the ones who said, "You know what, man, this ain't for me. I got to bounce. I'm going towards the city," and started laying roots in. I was going to call you about this the other day, man, because I saw a program, and the reason I was going to call, and I know you're not a gang channel, I know you're not this or that, but I was watching something, and they were showing I wish I would have remembered gangs in LA that go back 8 generations,
Okay.
9 or 10 generations in the 19. And I was gonna call you like, dude, like what era? Just because it intrigued me, I wanted to know like why did they develop?
Mhm.
What was the need for the gang 10 generations ago in LA? Right? It was something that struck me, man. But 10 generations deep, and you got this influx of Mexican Americans and Braceros now mixing and growing the culture and moving, bro. And the reason I bring that up is because I've been, you go to certain places in California that have a big population. You'll go to some parts of the city, man. It's all Spanish. That's not a bad thing. I'm not like, oh, that's terrible, but I'm just saying, where you just see the development, and it's not like it started overnight.
Mhm.
It's 7 generations, 6 generations. I bet you there's stores in LA that somebody could point to and be like, yeah, man, I've been going to this pandaria. They've been open since the 20s.
Oh no! Look, yeah, look.
Further.
There's so many places that I could name that you could get around without knowing a lick of English.
Right. So
I mean, from East LA to Pico Rivera to Bowen Park to La Puente. I could name so many places that you could get around without knowing not one word of English.
so imagine these Braceros who started leaving the city, going into the city, learning how to do other things.
Mhm.
Right? How about the guys who learned, you know what, maybe I'm working in a market now. Yeah, sure, they might be at the low end of the market, but some guys moved up. Some Braceros navigated.
Mhm.
Some Braceros moved up. Some Braceros learned, hard workers, learners. They developed skills. When I say that the Braceros was a nightmare, the American dream and the American nightmare, there's Braceros whose kids went on to college.
Right.
Right? There's
Yes.
Braceros who, because they became a Bracero, and I always talk about this, and went through that struggle that a lot of us forget about, that struggle because it's so easy for Latinos in America now.
Mhm.
Who set that groundwork?
Mhm.
Who had to go through that struggle and that ugly discrimination? Right? They did. They're the ones who put it down. And we take it for granted that we could walk in somewhere and somebody's speaking Spanish and we don't trip. And if somebody from outside the community was like, God, I wish somebody would speak English here, we'll all look at them like, fool, what do you know? We'll get
Mhm.
upset. Let them speak what they want because that's how we grew up.
Right. Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Somebody outside of the community says something, it's like, oh, no, 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 no. Right? They're the ones who put that growth in. They're the ones who, like I said, it was a nightmare. I'm going to show my class a million miles away.
Okay.
That guy
Yeah.
dude, his family was migrant workers. You
Yes.
know what I mean? The guy was picking when he was 7, 8 years old. It's just like it's unbelievable to me when I see how some people still had something in them to say, you know what, we're going to make this work.
Mhm.
We're going to rise above this. I'm here right now, but we're going to rise above it. And if I'm not going to rise above it, my son and daughter, they're going to rise above this. And they instilled those values or did something as a parent to really implement it where the child said, you know what, I'm going to do that just like you want. And a lot of people from the fields, I know a lot of people who picked who are successful people,
Mhm.
whose parents did this, whose parents did that. Somebody went through the struggle, somebody's reaping the benefits.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's what amazes me about the Braceros. You know, my mom picked. You know, when she, I used to when I would come home after a hard day at work, and she would, as a young guy, she'd be, "Mijo, what's the matter?" I'd be embarrassed to tell her like I was tired because I knew what kind of work she did. I didn't want my mom to look at me like, "Oh, go pick potatoes in Bakersfield or go pick, strawberries in Watsonville." I'd just be like, "Oh, I'm tired." You know what I mean? I'd be embarrassed, man. My mom probably worked harder than me when she was in those fields. I give a lot of respect to the Braceros, to anybody in the fields. Those are unsung heroes, man.
I agree. I think to a certain extent, we're all spoiled, rotten Americans. To a certain extent, some more than others, and we take so much for granted, and we kind of waste our lives away, complaining about certain things. Where it's like, these grounds were really set, like you said, man. Somebody did pay the struggle,
Right.
for us, and man, I think all we can do now is really reap the benefits, but I mean really reap the benefits. I'm not talking about survive your whole life on welfare. I'm talking about reap the benefits for those that really went through that actual true struggle. So when I heard about Los Braceros, I'm like, wow, and I'm not done researching them, man. It is really badass, man. Really learning about these guys.
Yeah,
But Robert, but let me go ahead and ask you, what is your thoughts on Cesar Chavez and his interaction with Los Braceros?
man, it's first of all, shout out to Cesar Chavez. I always start with that out, man, because he did accomplish something. He did have a movement, and his movement was beneficial. You know what I mean? It's just it's unfortunate because now a lot of people put like sauce on, ugly on his name because he used to use the word wetback.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So they kind of try to make it seem like he wasn't really true to his spirit or true to the people. But I can't comment on something about that. It's just I just wanted to put that out there just because I feel bad for him in his situation, right? Because now you're here, like you said, you're trying to work. You just came back from war, you just came back from doing your thing, and now people are basically undercutting you.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Again, using a truck analogy, you got this sweet contract for $15,000, and you're all hype. You can't wait, and then you say, "You know what? I got to do this other contract first. It's all agreed upon." And then the other guy goes in there, "I'll do it for 5,000."
Right.
It's like, dude, now you're taking money out of. So I
Mhm.
think, and I haven't done any research, but we're having our conversation here amongst each other. We always trying to be honest with each other. But in my personal belief, I think this is one of the beginnings of a rift in our community where people would separate themselves from Mexicano to Americans, Mexican Americans, right?
Okay.
There started to be like a little rift, like, well, we're Mexicans and we'll work harder for less because we work hard, and you're lazy Americans, and American Mexicans being like, dude, you don't understand. You could have this money too,
Okay.
but you're undercutting us. So I think this was the beginning of like a little natural rivalry, if I could say natural rivalry, or a little bit like you're not me and I'm not you, where we kind of look at each other like, we look the same, and we got certain things, but we're different. And like I've
Right.
said at the beginning, man, like we spend so much time talking about the few differences that we have in our community instead of all of the great things we have in common.
Wow.
And I've always thought that. You know what I mean? I always thought that this was one of those things that just kind of started this little riff. You're not really Mexican.
Right.
You're a pocho.
Right.
Mexican dude be, well, I might be a pocho, but at least I'm not a wetback. And I was like, what? Now we're no longer in it. Now we're no longer, no, for real. Now we're no
No,
longer
I get
we're no longer now we're being disrespectful to each other.
Right,
But now,
right, right.
now we're separating ourselves. And
Mm,
excuse me for using that language out there. I don't agree to any of that language. I'm just saying, let's if we're going to be honest, I've known Mexican Americans who called Mexicans wetback.
mm,
And I know
mm,
people from Mexico who will tell a guy who speaks Spanish, whose parents speak Spanish, you know what, dude, we ain't even Mexican, by the way.
mm, mm.
You know what I mean? You're gringo, or you're pocho, or you're whatever.
Right, right.
So I just think that was something that was in the beginning, like this put a little riff in our community.
Wow. You know what, Robert? That is deep, man. I've always kind of known, I'm sure everybody has always kind of known there's some sort of, I don't know if I should say division, but there's something there, right? There's a something there. Um, but you're right, man. Maybe this was probably the beginning, or it was actually drawing that line even thicker.
Mhm.
Yeah, because a lot of them were, Mexican Americans, and saying we are Americans and we want our American rights, but it's like we don't got a job because you brought in los braceros. And some of these guys are coming back from World War II, and it's like, come on, man, what are we doing here? How can you do this to us? So
But
wow, that's deep, man.
yeah, and the thing is, man, is that it seeps through everything in our culture,
Mm,
right? I'll never forget, man, in my life, you know, one of the best fights I ever saw. I'm still gonna say he was one of my favorite fighters, even though he's tripping now. Was Oscar De La Hoya,
yeah.
and I remember when he was fighting Fernando Vargas.
Hmm.
What would Fernando Vargas say about De La Hoya? He's really not Mexican. I'm a
Hmm.
real Mexican,
Hmm.
and De La Hoya he's really not Mexican. And what is I'll never forget Vargas. Who does he walk out with? Who walks out Vargas to stamp this is a Mexican? Do you remember who walked him out for that fight?
No, no. Who walked them off for that
Julio
fight?
Cesar Chavez,
Okay, okay.
putting the stamp on it. This is a real Mexican. De La
Right,
Hoya's not. Look at his shorts. Why are they Mexican and American?
right. Yes, yes.
Right.
He
So
used to wear those trunks. Yeah,
it seeps out even in something like a boxing match.
yes.
I've heard guys say stuff as silly as you go to Taco Bell. What kind of Mexican are you? I'm a real Mexican. I don't go to Taco Bell. Fool me, stop, miss me with all that. Give me my chalupa. You know what I mean?
Oh man, I love the Mexican pizza, man.
But I've heard stuff like that before.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
have. Oh, you don't like chili? Psh, what kind of Mexican are you? The kind of Mexican who don't like chili. I've heard
Right,
people say silly things like that to each other.
right.
You know
Yeah,
what I mean? This is where we're always trying to one up each other. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
I, like I said, I just think that was, I know that we're getting a little off topic, but I just think that was the beginning of it, and it's unfortunate. You know what I mean? Because with division, who knows what's going on? These guys are going to work for that. We're going to work for this. We're trying to work for that, and who's reaping all of the benefits? The person making the money, right?
Right.
The person
Yeah.
making the money, they're reaping all of the benefits, right? Without
Yeah.
without that, it's just like when people talk about, Mexican people are taking people's jobs. Who hires
Mhm.
them?
Right. Right.
Who hires them?
Yes. Yes.
You
Right.
don't want Mexican people, you don't want illegal people to have jobs? Don't hire them. And don't pay
Hmm.
them $10 an hour without insurance.
Hmm.
Why do you do that? Because you get paid. To me, it's as
Wow, man.
simple as that. You know what I mean? Excuse me. To me,
Yeah.
it's as simple as that. So, my apologies.
No, it's all good, man. Wow. Well, this was definitely good, man. Los Braceros, you guys can go ahead and look into it and do your own research on Los Braceros. I mean, they were some hard workers, man. And they were done dirty. They were done dirty. They were treated like cattle. Um, it was definitely not humane, not even for those times.
Right.
And they got basically robbed for their money, not just from the United States, but from Mexico as well. And Mexico made them pay. A lot of those guys, Mexico made them pay every last peso that they had for them to come up here. And then when they went back down, a lot of their money was gone, man. Because so there is no like, oh man, just point at one country. No, 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 man. These guys were done wrong all the way around. And at the end, from what I saw, a lot of families were just kind of like, man, I
Right.
regret it. Wish I never did it. I, went through horrible times, spent a lot of time away from my family, and
I,
that dream of us buying a little bit of land and doing our own little farming never came to be.
I,
So
I have even heard stories of Braceros who left their family, never went back, and started a family here.
yes, yes, that did happen.
That
That
happened as
did
well,
happen. Yeah,
right? And
yeah.
but the thing of another reason, I just want to harp on this real quick. I know we're pressed for time. Is that you know another reason this program was good for Mexico as well is because even though they're not breaking the bank, you know, I'm just tell this real quick story real quick, and it'll go to where I'm going. Is when I was a young guy, about 18 years old, I worked for a fencing company. I was putting up fences, retaining walls, and I had three guys who were brothers who were from Mexico. When I got paid, I'm 18, 19, whatever I got paid, of course, cash. That was one of the reasons I took the job. I was like, oh, cool, give me some cash. We all got paid cash. I remember, giving my mom a little bit of money, having a little bit of money for me to make it through the week, whatever little bills I had. You know what those three guys did every time they got paid?
What's that?
What do you think they did with their money? Sent it back.
Okay.
You know, you know that if today so much money from Mexicans who work in the United States gets sent back to Mexico, if that money didn't get sent back, Mexico's economy would probably collapse.
Wow.
I believe, and if somebody could look it up, but I believe somewhere between 55 billion to 60 billion dollars gets sent back to Mexico.
Holy smokes!
Yeah,
I did not know that.
yeah,
Wow.
gets sent back. Imagine if that didn't go back. What does
Yeah.
that allow Mexico? It allows them to keep the local grocery stores going, keeps the economy flowing, right?
Wow.
That was another reason that this was a good situation for Mexico as well. People were sending money back.
Yeah.
People were sending that money back like clockwork, right? Without that money, you
Yeah.
know, imagine
Wow. Yeah,
a
that's a lot of money, man.
lot of dough. That's a lot of dough.
Wow.
So, like I said, it was bad for these poor guys on both sides. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? But I see that, man, and I just love I just always love the spirit, anybody's spirit who's able to just, you know what, man, I'm gonna rise above.
Mhm.
We talk about it all the time, man. Self responsibility. You know what I mean? This is the hand I was dealt. Let's play the hell out of this hand,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Let's play the hell out of this hand and see. Hey, maybe I can even do something to get a better hand off this terrible hand.
Mhm.
And a lot of people do, man. And those are the people that I just look to and just say, "Geez, man, good for you."
I Yeah, I agree, Robert. I agree, man. I definitely agree. Denise, don't worry. We're doing these once a month on different subjects on Chicano history. But man, look, Los Braceros, shout outs to all Los Braceros, anybody who's family members and the big role that they played on coming over here and the big migration that it took, man, and all the horrible things that they went through. But you know, I would like movies to be made of things like this, but I don't want people to take it the wrong way. As always, how I always end these, Robert, with us, sharing Chicano history. I always end it with, don't use this stuff to get angry and start pointing your finger here, there, and everywhere, saying like, "Hey, man, I'm owed something now." Like, no, no, no. Use this as, look, somebody went through something, so I don't have to go through that. So I can go ahead and achieve, right? That's why that struggle was there. So I can go ahead and leap forward. They took that bullet, right? So the best thing you can do now is take that leap for that bullet that they took for you,
Right.
as opposed to, you know what, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just gonna, just be angry about it, and I'm not gonna move forward. I'm not gonna do anything at all. I'm just gonna be angry, just sit here, be angry, and not take any of the opportunities that I have because of those struggles.
Mhm.
You have those opportunities because of those struggles. So, you know, use that as fuel to move forward, man. But Robert, brother, any last words, carnal, before we wrap
Yeah,
it up?
man. I'm just going to end it with what you're saying, man. Is take this knowledge, man, and run with it, man. If it's something that you like, man, study a little bit about it, man, and be grateful that you're not the one who had to or go through that ordeal, right? And if you are, I know sometimes Ed, you and me will talk about some people do get upset and they feel like they're owed something. Don't feel that way. Try not to feel that way, right? Because we're not owed anything in this world. In my opinion, you know what I mean. We're not owed anything, man. We got to go make it happen. If there's a way that you can make it happen, and even in saying that, man, I just think we gotta, things like this. I always say it, man, and I always say it all the time, man. Is conversations like this, man. It's good because we're moving forward, right? We're talking about things and we're moving forward and we're having a discussion about it, right? And we can't mistake movement for moving forward, right? I've been talking about moving forward in a collective. We're not all the same. We talk about it all the time. We don't all think the same, but let's. I had somebody tell me one time, you could walk 5 miles on a treadmill. You didn't go anywhere.
Mhm.
So don't mistake movement and things that is going on and things that are coming at us as for real. Let's move forward. How can we move forward? How can we better prepare our young people out there? How can we prepare them better through trades, through education, through knowledge, through things that, to be honest, that a lot of us didn't get when we were young,
Right.
right? Knowledge of some great American history. I always call it American history. I know people want to label it Mexican American history. This is American history. Right,
Absolutely.
this is American history to me. Is somebody telling me about George Washington cutting down a cherry tree? Was it? This is American to me, right?
Mhm.
It's and if you can't acknowledge that and you want to put a label on it, you do that. I'm not. This is great American history for anybody, right? So just with that, and as I always said, man, thank you very much for having me. It's always a pleasure talking to you, man. You're a class act, and I can't say enough about you, homeboy.
Oh man, right back to you. And that's the reason why we're doing this. If you guys are more interested on other conversations that Robert and I have had about Chicano history, you guys go check out the playlist. It's under Chicano history. It's right there. And we're doing these once a month, different subjects. And why we're doing this, not to get anybody upset, because this education is not out there. It's not taught in schools unless you yourself go out and seek it. And I'm learning myself. I'm learning myself. I do not know a lot about this stuff, man. So big thank you to you, Robert. I appreciate you, brother.
I appreciate you too.
As always, familia, live your life like you're on the road. Be aware of your surroundings and always keep a safe distance. Blood makes you little, but loyalty makes you family. Till next time, this is Ed the Thecholotrucker for Chicano Studies High School teacher and a good friend of mine, one Mr. Robert Anthony. Over and out.